We'll call the meeting in order. It is Monday, July 8th of 2024. This is the Stoughton Plan Commission meeting. And we do have everyone present and accounted for. And we do have a quorum, and we are certified in compliance with open meeting laws. The first item of business would be approval of the minutes from June 10th. I would entertain a motion for those minutes.
So moved. Something else.
Okay.
So moved.
Who's
Take your
first?
pick.
Okay.
And whomever else the second.
Okay. Schumacher.
Okay.
Motion by Bradford, second by Schumacher. Or motion by Schumacher, second by Bradford.
You could really flip a coin or 4 coins.
All right. Chris is taking the official minutes, so we'll let her choose. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. Next item is the council representative report.
And as far as that goes, it looked really, the only activity we had was a first reading of 01524 at the June 25th council meeting.
Okay, any questions? Hearing none. Looks like we have somebody that had signed up online to speak. Mr. Sweeney, are you able to speak?
Yeah, I'm just online. If there's any questions, I don't have to speak unless questions come up on the SIBO issue.
Okay. Thank you for being here. All right, that would take us to item number 6, which is the certified survey map for 1125 West Main Street. And Director Munz Pritchard, you want to give us kind of an update on that?
Sure, I can. Tim's online. He was actually the one that wrote the planner's report on this, but I can tell you guys what's going on. Essentially, this is a 2-lot CSM at 1125 West Main Street for Habitat for Humanity, and they're looking for a 2-lot CSM approval. The parent parcel are currently, they were rezoned to RMR-10 in 2018. And so this all falls within that jurisdiction. Like, essentially what'll happen is they'll come in for the CSM, but they don't have to go through the other approvals because it is a permitted use in that district. What they're going to be doing, the duplexes that you're going to be seeing in the previous one. However, they don't need any kind of flexibility from the zoning district, so there's no like plan development overlay. It just meets all the minimum criteria, which is what we want to start seeing here. So
Anything you want to add, Tim?
Good evening, all. No, I think Chris covered it. Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward request. 2-lot CSM, and the plan is to build actually a single family home on each lot. And so, right, there's no further site plan approvals. They'll just come in, assuming this gets approved, they'll just come in for their standard building permits, and then the setbacks and everything will get evaluated at time of building permit.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners? Hearing none, I would, and developers are here too if you need to speak with them. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion for a recommendation for the CSM.
I'll move to approve the CSM.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bradford. All right. Once again, any discussion on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, and the next item is a request for amendment to the Meadows of Kettle Park West General Development Plan. And this one you got a glimpse of last month, and the council did as well. And we asked the developers to basically come in and kind of give us an overview of the project and who they are, kind of what they want to do, and why we should consider this development plan. So the developers are here, have some slides here. You could come up to the mic and we can go through them. You just push the button there, Connor. There you go.
You'd think I'd
You're
understand that by now, but thank you very much, Mayor Swadley. Connor Kearney here for Development Group. Thank you for having us back and for your review and time at the previous Plan Commission meeting. There was a great deal of positive feedback that we got to bring back to the project team to really look at how we can refine the initial vision for this project and work with our building partner, D.R. Horton, on the products envisioned for the alley lots here at the Meadows of Kettle Park West. Since the previous meeting, in working with city staff, going through the city planners' considerations, and evaluating the feedback from the Plan Commission members, we put together this updated presentation to provide a few extra exhibits. It just makes it a little bit more clear on the type of product that we were envisioning for these lots. That was a common question or clarification asked at the previous meeting, was to really dial in what type of home you'd envision building here, all the way down to level of detail with colors, floor plans, elevations. So the packet that's provided here this evening provides that extra detail and was generated working in tandem with our building partner, D.R. Horton, who D.R. Horton's land manager, Chris Luster, is here with me this evening. He's going to be available for any detailed questions regarding the homes themselves and any background information on D.R. Horton as a company. So we would love to be able to answer any questions and want to highlight 3 key items before going into a Q&A. A number of the comments revolved around, as I mentioned, more detail of the actual product. And three comments were made in particular, the first of which was, are these all going to be duplexes? Is there the potential to work in single units in some of the blocks to mix that up? We have explored that since, and that's what's highlighted in these the contextual maps in the first few slides here. We're working with D.R. Horton on potential to bring in standalone lots and where they would sit in some of those blocks. So this is the overall alley lot site plan, and you can see a handful of them mixed in, but the next page, it highlights where we're able to fit those single products in that orange color. And originally, they were to be on the corners, but we felt we needed to work in some variation to the center of those blocks. We did our best to place the single standalone units in the center of those blocks in an effort to break up any variations. So that was one item we really wanted to highlight in the presentation packet. Second item we wanted to highlight mentioned elevations, variation in certain types of colors or different types of elevations, and provided within the packet are a few others that D.R. Horton has worked to generate to supplement the original elevation that was provided. Now, Chris can provide a lot more detail on their process, what they're able to do and offer with those elevations. Their process is very much driven by consumer demand, so the colors, the materials, floor plan, layout, extremely detailed process that's driven by consumer demand. So that's how they try to pinpoint the selections here. Their whole goal is to build something that's accepted by the community, that sells, that a consumer would like to buy. So their selections and color palettes reflect that. And the third item I did want to also highlight that was brought up at the previous Plan Commission meeting was the potential to include basements on these. That's something I will let Chris comment on as well in the Q&A session. We're actively exploring the potential to get basements into some of these units as well, whether that means all, a portion, or some. That's to be determined, but that's working in tandem with D.R. Horton. So to address those 3 main items, those are the loudest comments that carried the most weight at the previous meeting. We felt they were very important to address, and over the course of the past 30 days, we've worked with D.R. Horton's design team to do so. So with that, glad to open up for questions, address any additional comments, or welcome Chris up for Q&A as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners at this point?
Connor, you said you looked at the
Oh,
corners.
hit the button there.
You had said you looked at putting those single-family homes on the corners. Why did you decide, I didn't understand why you said you decided to mix them in rather than do that.
It all depended on where the vacant parcel worked out with the current lot lines, because we're not looking at a replat here. Laterals are already installed. So it was more so where it worked best with the site. If you were to choose a corner piece, it creates a little bit more buffer from the corner right-of-ways, but it doesn't offer the same variation in a lot and block diagram if you were to place that in the middle. We're a little bit restricted by what's already out there with laterals and constructed infrastructure. So we tried to mix them as best we could into the center of blocks.
And if I may address that too, please.
Yep, sure. Come up.
Thank you all for having me tonight. So Chris Lester, I'm with Horton. The feedback that the original layout of this, the single with, the remainder single family lots were only on the corners. And so the request from I think from staff and both from council was, can you mix them in so they're not only on the corners, that's varied kind of where they are through the blocks. So it isn't just, there's one in this corner, there's one in this corner, there's one in this corner. Instead, it's kind of varied through the community.
I guess I'm just looking at the way they're placed on here and just in my head thinking aesthetically. I mean, it's like a single family home all of a sudden, in a row of the townhomes are more prominent.
Right.
So I guess I'm just thinking of visually, if I were a buyer or whatever,
I completely understand
either
that.
have two singles together on one side of the row and something that where they weren't the only single, it just kind of looks.
No, understood.
I'm not saying it's a building thing,
I completely understand that, and I absolutely, and it was also in a response to the comment that someone else would have that's the exact opposite of that, of like, I don't like these things mixed all through, why can't you have them on the corners? So that's, the direction that I believe we were asked to go take a look at was, can we spread this out more throughout the community rather than just kind of as a corner condition? And this is what we came up with based on existing conditions, existing utilities in the ground, existing laterals, et cetera, plus the alley structure already being in place. This is how the FDG group came up with and said they could lay this out.
You can only get 8. You can only get 8.
I think there's 6. No, 8, you're right. I'm sorry, I was focusing on this. There's a section to the left, yes.
So you can only get 8.
Counting's
Out
hard,
of all
I'm
those
sorry.
units, you can only get 8 single family.
And I think what they did is, in the blocks, there's an odd number of lots, so that's where they put in the singles, is, you only had like 7 lots instead of 8 lots.
Okay.
So then they put the single family in there to fill those lots. And then, like was mentioned, there was feedback that suggested maybe we mix them in instead of putting them on the end. I guess that's in the eye of the beholder. They can do it one way or the other way, or maybe a combination thereof. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did have a quick
I was just
question for
looking at
you.
your own drawing, and that kind of looks strange.
Yeah,
Unless there's a
I'm gonna
walking
say-
path or something along there, I mean, it just kind of proportionally just makes my eyes go weird.
I get that. I'm going to say that's definitely not to scale, because based on the height of the people there, those are roughly, 225-foot high trees. So it's a little, the scale doesn't really quite do it, but that
Yeah.
shows how it would kind of break in within the community itself. But
So just to follow up on that, and I don't know what the process will be if this is approved, as far as, do you start with the twin homes, or do you start with the single family, or is it a combination thereof? So that's my initial question, and I'm going to have a follow-up.
sure. Our process would be to build down the block. So if you've got, starting on that first, in the first section, let's say the south was a westernmost one where there's 2, and then the first single family, you'd build the 2 twin homes, then you'd build the single family, then you'd build the twin homes, right? We would just move down the block,
Okay. And do
one by
you
one.
market them while you're building them, or do you wait until they're completed?
We would market them as we're building them. We offer them for sale and have them available once they reach drywall, essentially, is where we are
Okay.
typically.
So that brings me to the third question, and that would be, you probably know the market better than I do, but let's say, for example, the market shows that there's more interest in the single-family lots than the twin lots. Would you guys have the flexibility to take some of them other twin lots and make them single-family homes, if that's what the market suggested?
I would think that's something we could look at, and it would also be something that we'd have to work at with Forward, the ultimate owner of the land, right? We do, this is broken into 2 phases already, right? We've got the stuff that's, you've got that section that goes to, goes down towards the south, which is a second phase, which has been explained to us that until that other entrance is kind of built, that's not quite available just yet. So that certainly is something you could almost look at, as we're going through it. But as Connor alluded to it earlier, we want to build homes that people want to buy. So, our founder, Don Horton, always used to say, this is a simple business, right? We make it complicated, but it's an open book test. We offer this stuff out for the market, and if they buy it, well, we build more of it. And if they don't like it at all and don't buy it, well, then we stop building that, because that's not what we're doing.
And then, Chris, you can probably answer this too, so currently, without any approval, they could actually build on the single-family units, right?
Yeah, so essentially what is there right now is at the June 2022 Plan Commission meeting, that's when that development was approved, essentially. And so what was approved there is that you guys approved the, you approved basically the flexibility of a reduced rear yard setback of alley curb from 25 feet to 22 feet, and the reduced front yard setback from 20 feet to 14 feet for, and then we list the blocks, and then reducing the rear yard setback to the back alley curb from 25 feet to 22 feet on those lots listed as well. And then it was, let's see, SR 6 is what the underlying zoning is with that plan development over top. And I can go back over, would you guys want me to go back over the planner's report so you can see what they're looking at requesting? Okay, so I'm not going to read back through what it currently is, because I just said that. So the developer is requesting an amendment to the Meadows of Kettle Park West General Plan Development, amending the underlying zoning of the alleyway lots to revisit from SR 6 to TR 6. The challenge would be allowing for construction, the change would be allowing for construction of a simple 0 lot line, right? The duplexes, and it should be noted that the request amendment should supersede the previous approvals for the subject lots that were granted in June of 2022. So in other words, when we're changing the zoning, we need to change the zoning, right? So it supersedes and we're starting essentially from scratch again. The developer is requesting the following flexibilities to the GDP in addition to the TR6 underlying zoning. So it increased the MGD of 6 dwelling units per acre to 6.5 dwelling units per acre. Minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet for each dwelling unit. The developer is now requesting 4,000 feet per dwelling unit. The minimum front or street lot line to house is 20 feet. 15 feet for open walled front porches. The developer is requesting a front yard setback of 14 feet with 6 feet to open roof porches on the following locations, then it listed. The side yard setback from the lot line to the house or attached minimum garage is 20 feet or 0 foot along the common wall. So this is side yard setback. The developer is requesting a side yard setback of 6 feet from the lot line or 14 feet between principal structures. Developers requesting the following rear yard setback. The rear yard setback they were requesting was the 20 feet, but it's 20, they were requesting 22 feet, but it's only 20 feet in this area, so it wasn't understanding what the request was there. Developers requesting GDP for accessory structures of 4 feet. That's currently under the TR6. And then goes into some of their approvals for this too. Number 8 is another one that they're looking at. The current minimum landscape LSR per ordinance is 50%. The developer is requesting a landscape surface of 30. And then 9, 10, and 11, and 12 have to do with utilities, which are currently in the ground, and it's the utility department that needs to review. So when I was looking at this, because it's a plan development, we can ask for additional things. And that was where I came in with the recommendations for this. And you guys can take, leave, or change whatever you want, okay? So one of the things, minimum number of off-street parking spaces required on the lot, including garage and all design surfaces, is 2.5 per 3 or more bedrooms, or two per 2 bedrooms. I didn't have the layout of what was inside of those. I want to make sure that if there are 5 bedrooms, I don't know. We need to make sure that there's minimum parking, right? Minimum design standards with a reduced yard setback. The side windows of adjacent units should not line up. The front door access should be placed on separate access points and not located on the same porch area. If you guys want to allow for this stuff, you need to specify what you want or don't want in this. You can see their design has it on the same porches. If you are fine with that, that's okay. Or if you want to see some kind of delineation there, you could request that, because this is part of the plan development that you're asking of the overlay. I know one of the things that we had talked about was adjacent, like just not lining them up next to each other, so you weren't looking out a window into a window. So like that would be an easy solution for these. Side-by-side duplexes must not mirror image. Each unit shall consist of changes in material, appropriate architecture detail that adds scale to the long walls. This will include different facade elevations. Dwelling units must have a roofline configuration, and the same color and design cannot be closer than 5 dwelling units from each other. You guys need to decide what you want to see there, and then make sure it's specifically called out, so that if it is something you want to see, I can make sure I enforce it through the plan development when it comes through, okay? Duplexes shall provide separate coverage entranceway for each unit with a minimum dimension of 4 feet by 6 feet. They're a joint one right now. If you want to see that, that's fine. Again, you have to let me know what you want approved so we can make sure it's enforceable. Unless the duplex is located on double frontage lot coverage, no door may be located on the side yard of the proposed building. One access door may be located in the front and one in the rear. I ask that you guys approve that because it has to do with egress. And what will happen is that somebody will then put a porch on, and now they're in the side yard setbacks. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. Due to the small footprint of the site, all proposed duplex shall have basements. And number 4 and number 5 are the conditions by staff, essentially, and approval by you guys. So really what we're looking at is what you guys want to allow for that overlay plan development, what you want to approve, and any additional stipulations you want to put on it. And I need them listed, and that way I can make sure that they're enforceable. Okay?
So I guess my question to the developers, out of the planner recommendations, some of these I know are met. Maybe you can just kind of walk through them and then let us know where you're at on the outstanding ones.
Yeah, we can do that. As far as minimum off-street parking, so each of these units has a 2-car attached garage with it. And then there's also, with the setbacks that's there, there's enough driveway to be able to park an additional 2 cars in the driveway if necessary that's there. And there's also some additional parking provided throughout. So
You feel that's been met?
yeah, that we exceed the number if it's
Okay.
2.5, right? And the question too, these units have 4 bedrooms. There's also a potential for a 3-bedroom configuration with the 2, but figure most of them have 4 bedrooms, right? As far as,
Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
So since they can meet that, I would recommend using that as a requirement for the plan development. That's not going to be a problem, and then have it in writing, right?
it's always, people measure square footage a little bit differently, right? But they're around 1,560 feet, 1,600 square feet, somewhere in there. So side-by-side duplexes may not be mirror images. We came and in other communities where we build this product, we've got only one elevation package. With the submittal tonight, we included a couple other different elevations. What we can also do with those elevations too, if necessary, is mirror them essentially, so it's not always, you know, the graphite on the left, the weathered on the right. You could also do another one. So we've added some additional to respond to that. As far as the roof line configurations being different, I cannot change that. The roof line is the roof line. As far as the side-by-side, we're looking at the potential for offsetting them a little bit from each other, so you don't have direct lining straight up in a straight line down the road. That also goes into our analysis when we're looking at the potential for basements. It depends on site conditions. The problem that we have too a little bit where, you know, when you push on one side, you got to pull on the other. I don't want to push a house back and then all of a sudden the driveway that I just talked about where being able to park cars is now all of a sudden shortened so much that you don't have that, right? So we're looking at the potential for that, but I can't commit to that one way or the other tonight. Same color and design, cannot be closer than 5 dwelling units from each other. I don't think we can commit to that level of 5, but I also think too, the way the blocks are laid up, there's not really, you know, you'll have spacing between the two. So if I've got 3 different elevation packages available and the possibility to mirror them, you'll have different differentiation between those two. So I'd ask for some adjustment into that.
What would be an acceptable, maybe every 3?
If I've got 3, I think we could probably do that. And then I would also, but I'd also take into consideration too that if we move forward with the plan where you've got the single family in the middle of the block, well then that kind of resets the whole thing, right? For all of a sudden you look at that. So it would really be the trick is always in the details, right? It would really have to be how it's laid out, right? Just well within 3 of each other. I think that sounds right, but I don't want to, you know, commit to that and then all of a sudden find out it's like, well, they were looking at this and this, so now you can't build this one out, right? You end up, you know, I don't want to paint myself into a corner, right? Using since we're talking about elevations and painting anyway. Duplexes provide separate covered entries for each dwelling unit, minimum of 4 feet by 6 feet. It's got a paired front patio. For one of the reasons why these are attractive is they are, you know, we can't call them maintenance free anymore because that's I've been told by my legal team I can't use that term anymore. These are extremely low maintenance. One of the reasons too to have one set of, you know, if you have one concrete porch, it's a whole lot easier for long-term maintenance and taking care of that. The homeowners association would be responsible for that. So just having it that way, it's just a little bit easier to do. And I think, what other ones were there?
I'll put it back up. I'm just bouncing back and forth here, so.
Oh, side doors, I can commit to no side doors, that's easy, right? What I would probably do though is I'll do it, no problem, except for this variance. What I typically do is when we have our model home, our construction superintendent's office out of the garage. In the model home, I get a side door to access to the garage directly, but then we remove it once we get a final CO for the site. But we do not offer it as an option. We cannot build it on any other home.
Well, and one of the things, the way that it's written, so in theory, you could put that side door on one of the lots that has is a side street access, and it would be okay. Yeah, it's a corner lot.
Well, the layout that we proposed, our model would be on the corner. So
yeah, so that would be okay there. But that's how the planner's report is written. It's
right.
like, yeah.
I hate doing that, and then we start building the model, and the first thing someone comes out and says, hey, there's a side door here. You said no, and I'm like, hey, you know, the simpler we make things is the better, right? It's and I get that as a concession to our construction guys because they do so much great work for us, and they really like just open the garage door. Closing the garage door is a huge pain, but I would much rather have our salespeople have a conversation with potential customers like, no, there are no side doors. And then when they go outside and point to that one, go, oh, well, that one's special. You can't have that one, so.
Just say no side doors unless it's only street
Only
frontage.
street front, yes, street front.
You can just blame the city for that.
When we get started out here, I'll have you come talk to the sales team and see if you could do it. I've been trying it for years.
That could actually change the look of some things, you know.
I get it. 100% I get
Little deck on
it.
there, yeah,
So,
little zhuzh.
Did I address the ones that were out there?
I'll pull it back up again.
Yeah, I
here.
appreciate that. I'm gonna
Sure.
walk over.
I don't
'cause
think
my
that
eyes are
is
That's
what
not
they were
it.
single family.
So
It's this one.
I can read through. So the reduced side yard setbacks, the side windows on adjacent units should not line up. You're gonna offset those by 2 feet, so
looking
they're
at that
not gonna line up.
potentially, yes.
So that would be one. The front door access should be placed on separate access points and not located on the same porch. Currently, that's what's showing. What would you guys like to see there?
And that's the one where I'm saying, I need to keep it where it is, and I can't keep the same porch.
Yeah, that's on this one.
Yeah. A single slab isn't a problem.
Do we wanna add, okay, that's fine.
I mean, that's something that you all will have to decide if you're okay with that, but I think
Chris, you
we have
just
some
you're just
rationale to
talking
leave
about a
it.
single slab rather than a divided.
So like, if you see how they are right now, like,
Yeah.
my nightmare would be walking out right next to my neighbor, to be honest with you. That's, you know, so there could be, if you guys want to keep it or you don't care, this is your decision, right? It's a part of the plan development, that's where you're asking for it.
Do you put a divider?
No, and this is, we have found that the market accepts this. This just really is, it's not.
Because I don't
something-
think there's a problem with the slab, but I see what
Yeah.
you're saying, and somebody could put it up, I guess, if the homeowners didn't.
I can see that, but in all honesty, you
Just
know,
some slabs or
this is a product that's geared towards a very specific buyer. It's an attainable entry-level type of product, so you're dealing with people that are, or people, this might be their first home or their first, you know, time owning something on this one. It's not for everybody, and, you know, I can totally understand
not for Chris
that
anyway.
perspective, but I don't, you know.
I've worked in this
isn't built
industry
for-
too long.
Yeah, you're a different customer than would be
Yeah.
interested in this. And that's, I find myself doing that all the time, and it's something I've had to learn over the years, is sometimes my biggest mistake is trying to put, and us in the home building business, is we try to put ourselves in the home rather than the buyers we're actually trying to reach in the
I'm
home.
a realtor, I get that.
Yeah, so.
But I will tell you that there are ones that are in McFarland that are similar, and they just have a half wall that cuts the porch. It's just a little stone, like.
Is that at Terra Vesa?
No.
No, that's in Fitchburg, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's Fitchburg.
I think-
Although I think they may have a divider too.
They have something similar.
But
I-
they're a
I-
higher price point.
It
than I think
is,
You're
and-
talking about, no, I'm talking about over in the, I can't think of it, it's an older subdivision,
Okay.
Secret Places and whatnot over there. Yeah, Viridian.
Yeah.
It's in a Viridian area.
In our community so far, that has not been something that's brought up or been an objection, so we've been kind of going with what works.
Yeah.
So if the homeowners were to get together, that would be something the HOA could discuss.
Once we turn it over, if they did something like that, that's certainly something they could do, right? But that would be a homeowner association decision.
Right, and then they would have to figure out the expense.
They would figure out how they do it, they'd have to figure out how to maintain it long-term,
Yeah.
how to reserve for it, do the whole bit, right? And we'd much rather have it as simple and as easy as we possibly can. Once the owners are in there, once the homeowners are there, they get to, they can change the community how they want. We're going from our experience so far. And
On the outside of the house in a zero lot, that's gonna be hard.
I think, let me explain something really fast. I have had to deal with so many neighbor disputes, that is why I come from a different perspective with this. Not necessarily, that's why, so, but,
No, there's an opportunity I can see here for somebody putting a kid's bike and it's over on their side, or it's a planter that's on, I mean, I get where you're coming from, and it does make sense to divide it, but I also get what you're saying cost-wise, so.
And feedback that we've received so far from buyers of this product, right, so.
Horton hasn't built in Stoughton yet.
Fair point.
I came here and sold, and it's a different community.
I'd say it always the same, right?
So, in the front porch door access could be stricken from what I'm getting, from what you're saying, if you want anything added, or you want to keep, okay, that's fine, Tom.
Yeah, I have, I'm sorry. So have any, sorry, Tom.
That's not set in stone.
No, you can't assume that right now.
So my question is, how many of these HOAs have there been any HOAs that have asked for the divider afterwards, or that have gone to the divider route?
Not that I'm aware of, but truthfully, I'm not spending a whole lot of time checking into that, but it isn't something, we take surveys every 30 days, every 7 months, and after every year, and generally in those surveys from our customers, the litany of things that they said that they're happy about and that they don't like, are included in that, and that's not one that I've seen, right? Oh, I really wish you would have included this, right? That really hasn't been something that I've seen.
Okay, you opened it up. What's on that list? What's
The number one complaint?
major say, yeah. Out.
Lack of communication when we'd set up an appointment.
Okay.
Really, somebody didn't call me back. Somebody said they were gonna show up and they didn't show up, and then, I can't really think of it, but it's kind of the top two, and then the rest of them, and the other ones, it depends on communities.
And when will you know about the basement situation? When can you say, yes, we can do basements, or no, we can't do basements? Because you said that was in a,
We'll know that in the next couple of weeks.
So this is the thing though, is I don't know where you guys want to go from here, but I'm going to ask that you make a motion, even if it's to table for more information, right? But the thing is if you approve the plan development and require basements, then that's something that has to happen for the development to happen. Does that make sense?
Now, I'm intending to build basements in this community. I'm waiting back for my soil test to confirm that I can in fact do that. I'm not dealing with a situation where it's not allowed or not feasible. So the plan is to build basements here.
then I got two more for you.
Okay,
What is the square footage on the single-family house?
I would be the same.
Okay. And then is it also gonna be 0 lot line? I mean,
No.
it'll have a yard?
It'll have
No.
side yards essentially, and it would be, thing is, it would be a detached duplex,
Okay.
right? It would be treated the
Right,
same
right.
as all the other units
Okay.
for the uniformity of the HOA.
Okay.
Alder Mayeski, did you have?
No, I'm gonna hold off for now.
Anybody else at this point? So, what I'm understanding on the plan development is, if we're gonna take a position and make a recommendation to the council, you can recommend it any way you want it, or you can deny it, or the third option, I don't know if this is a good one, is we can recommend it with some contingencies, because we don't have all the information yet. And I don't know how you like to roll on those items, Chris.
So this is, because I called Rick, because I wanted to double check this, because I want to make sure Rick said basically what we could do is we could say like, hey, for example, like he's waiting to get his soils test back, and like, let's say, and we have areas in town like this, right, that it's not conducive to put basements in like 5 of the areas, then we would approve the plan development with the understanding. So like you guys could say, we're tabling it with the understanding we want, and then the list of stuff that you want to come back to recommend approval of the plan development. Or you could deny it, or you could recommend approval with, these outliers as part of the plan development. Does that make sense? So you essentially have 3 options. You can table it, but we have to be very specific on what we want to see back with the tabling, which I think just minimum the basement thing, because like I don't want to require you guys to have basements and it comes back and like 5 of them are under the water table and they'll be underwater all the time. Like we don't want to see that for landowners, right? The second direction you can go is denial, and then what would happen is the existing zoning with that flexibility would just stand. And so they could go in and put essentially with those little red dots, that's what you would see there, right? Except that, overall. And then the third is you could just make a recommendation for approval now and pick what you want, and then it would go to council. Those are your 3 directions you can go.
Could I add on to that really
Sure.
quickly? And so the intention here is to do basements. So would it be able to provide the recommendation that it moves forward, but if for some reason there were certain lots that couldn't have basements, we would have to come back on that?
That's an interesting question, because I don't think it would have to come back here, but it would have to, the recommendation is to council for the
Right.
zoning. And so essentially it'd have to go through the 2 readings at council. So we could say, recommended, so then basically you'd have to make your case in front of the council members, like, hey, we've got these 12 lots that can't have basements because of hydrosoils or whatever.
So in the first reading would be 2 weeks from tomorrow, and then the second reading, if we were to get to that point, would be basically in a month. So
Got it.
that would be the meeting you'd have to have everything tied up by, because I'm sure you're on a timeline.
Yeah.
Like probably yesterday, if you're like most developers.
Last week, actually.
So that would kind of be the process, is whatever were to potentially move forward from here to council would be looked at in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that.
Right. So, and the second item I wanted to point out, and Connor can speak to this, sort of the underlying zoning, the detached single-family home lots that have been out here for, you could speak to that better, so.
Yeah, they have. I mean, we've been listed. They were designed in accordance with Veridian standards on how the other lots that they do in the market. We had another builder that had just the single family homes under contract that was unable to move forward. So it did take some creativity on the product side of things to figure out a way to move forward on these lots to get some momentum. So, not saying third time's the charm, but I am very pleased with where this proposal has landed. And I think by working together, we could creatively solve some of these issues, whether it's basements or otherwise.
Yeah, and I would just add, initially I was a little skeptical, I must admit, but I feel like they're trying to make this work. They're working in good faith with us, and I'm sure you feel that we are as well. And that's why you see, the single-family homes sprinkled in there, and the effort for the basement and some of the other things that we mentioned. I don't know what the alternative will be if we can't get this through. I think that for the entry level, there's just not a lot of options. This will be at a price point that's lower than anything that we have on the market. We all know there's a housing shortage in Dane County, so this is a way to help with that challenge. Financially, if we create value out at Kettle Park West in this TIF district, that not only puts that in a stronger position financially, but it gives the city more options on maybe some of the other TIF districts that aren't performing at a level that we'd like to see, or possibly, do some other expansion in the area, near this as well. So I think that there are some positives. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of alternatives, but we certainly want to make sure that any concerns that we have here we can get addressed, because I know the council has some of the similar concerns. One of the questions that came up there was on the soundproofing, and I think we received some testimonial from our building inspector on that. Maybe you can share that, Chris.
Yeah, I had our building inspector reach out to one of the areas that this is getting developed, and I think it sounds like between the units, and I'm guessing part of it has to do with the firewall too, honestly. So, would you hear your kid upstairs running around? Yeah, probably, but I don't think you'd hear the neighbor's kid next door. I mean, in theory, depends how loud that neighbor's kid is, but, from what I was hearing, that they are built sound in that sense, right? So, but I would think that also has to fall back on firewall too, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I think we were told
Is it block
firewall,
construction with?
installation, and we also were told that, that your group has been a pleasure to work with from that other community that we talked to, which is encouraging.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear, so appreciate, I sweat in there for a little bit.
So what is the construction of that divider wall, do you know?
I wish I could tell you in detail, but one of the things I can tell you that we did is, I think the floor plans are in your packet. If you looked at the way that we built it, the amount of living space that's actually side by side in the units is minimized, right? You've got a bedroom on the top floor, and you've got a laundry room, you've got staircases that match up with each other. But your primary living, your kitchen, and then 3 of the 4 bedrooms are all on the outside of the home, right? So we've taken that into the design of the home to, minimize that level.
Commissioner Farrell.
Yes, Mayor. Yeah, a lot of conversation about basements, and I think the genesis, thanks to our expert realtor here, was that there was a concern, there was a marketability issue, and one of my questions, and it pertains more to, I guess, our scope of duties. It seems like as a planning commission, I can certainly see where we'd have some guidance, direction on exterior architecture. But when it comes to marketability, I would think that would be something that would be outside of our scope of duties, if you will, sort of out of our swim lane. Am I right in that?
I'm going to let the planner answer that one.
Thanks. So I'll be 100% honest with you. Part of the reason I required basements is because of the reduce on the side yards and all of that. We're looking at a smaller footprint than a normal home. And I was like, that additional space for storage and whatnot, because there's not going to be a lot of spaces outside, is why I requested it. That coupled with it didn't hurt. We've had tornadoes every 3 weeks? I think even less than that. But honestly, I looked at the fact that we're reducing the setbacks, because right now we can't require basements, right? But through the plan development, we can. And I was like, we're reducing the amount of space these people have that are purchasing these houses. Where can we get them more space? And that is a lot of the reason that I'm asking for this on the plan development. Does that make sense? So I felt like that was the give and take on this. And obviously I don't want to require basements on areas if it's below the water line and all of that stuff, but we want to get them the most, if we're reducing the amount of space that they have to live, we want to get them space other places, so.
Yeah, and I think the follow-up on the storage is, I don't know what the HOA says, but at least from the yard size, you probably won't be able to get a huge deck out there, or a shed or anything like that.
No, it'll all be common area.
Yeah, and so then from affordability, it's going to be less affordable if the homeowner has to rent storage somewhere. So I think
But at the same time, it's the balancing act of,
Right.
I'm adding the cost of the basement to the price of the home.
Right.
Right, so it's always, you balance the marketability, you balance the saleability, you balance the price point, right? And with rates at 7.25, higher, every dollar that's the, price of the home just increases the monthly payment, so that's sort of the balancing act. But, we feel like we've done a good faith effort in addressing that comment. We're doing it here, we're just making sure that we can, in fact.
And I think it makes for a better home for the reasons mentioned. Also gives the homeowner more flexibility. Maybe they want a playroom or a man cave or an office. They have the flexibility to do that if there's a basement as well. Shelter is certainly important too, but storage I think is a big one. So I think I appreciate the fact that you guys were willing to work with us on that. Alder Majewski.
Could you explain what the difference will be between 50% and 30% in the landscape requirement?
Honestly, I don't know that I can. I'm sorry. You know, I would, because it's through a plan development, it would have to come up for an SIP review from you guys, so they would have to go through that, and you would have to look at the landscaping again. And I was just, man, I'm sorry, I don't have the stuff memorized yet, and I will eventually. Because I was just looking at this. But, I mean, ideally, what I would like to see here, I know I'm going to go off topic and I apologize, but if they can offset the houses by a couple of feet so that we're not getting those windows lining up, and then planting trees in those offset areas, that could look potentially nice, right? Why did you guys ask for the reduction? Is it because the yards are so small it's going to be hard to meet those minimum requirements?
So it's a little bit misleading in that currently the underlying zoning of SR6, I believe, our current, I think it's 30%, the requirement right now.
The current is 30, and then when you changed
To allow the zero
popped up
lot
to,
line.
Okay, so in other
Yeah.
words, they're trying not to redo the entire landscaping plan.
It's consistent with the current zoning right now, and in fact, the way it shakes out with the footprints, the pervious surface would actually increase than if we were to build out as zoned. But by changing, pervious would increase. There'd be more open space as currently designed. Impervious would decrease, correct.
Pervious up, impervious down.
Yes.
I think I'm following.
Yep.
Is this photo that we have, is that typical of what we would expect, or is that just something that?
Each unit has a landscaping package. It's not quite that, but we would, you know.
How about this
So that's our typical landscaping package right there, right, as installed. So that tree was installed, you know, in the spring. It hasn't bloomed yet. It's not a stick tree.
So you typically have one on the side, one in the front, some shrubs?
Now, the thing that I would look at too, though, with the introduction of basements on those sides, to make sure that you can get trees in between them as well, right?
Sure.
That's caveat there. But you can see there is a tree in between the two units there. It's just in the front of the home.
Okay.
And there's the one on the side there on the corner lot.
All right, Alder Maskey has more.
I'm just gonna make a couple comments real quick. First one is, I hate these planned developments. You know why? Because I always feel like the city gets a bait and switch. You know, we started with product A, we are now on product C or D. My question comes back then to fellow council members. Would this have passed originally in its current form? It probably would not have. That's number one. Number two, we're debating cookie cutter here. Exact same building, plop, 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 plop. Gonna change the color on them. If, by whatever reason, this does get put together, I will guarantee, because I will push for it in council and everywhere else, that there will be an offset, and it'll be at least 2 feet. I would rather see 3. You know, I have 2 jobs here. One is to ensure that on this commission that we dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure that all of the requirements are done the way they're supposed to be done. On council, my job is to make sure that this community gets the best product it can possibly get, the highest quality product it can possibly get. Do I feel like we're going to be getting that right now? I'm having a real hard time saying yes to that. I don't enjoy cookie cutter developments. You know, they do this exact same development they put in I don't know how many other communities you do. You know, could blindfold you, plop you down on it. You wouldn't know if you're in Stoughton, or you wouldn't know if you're in Timbuktu. I have a hard time with the whole issue of cramming more into less. And we will be ending up with they're looking for a low point price point, and that's exactly what we'll get. And that's not what my job is on council. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay. And I think, those are fair points. I think what we're looking at is a couple things. The next agenda item where we're going to be looking at proposed zoning changes that'll minimize, if not eliminate, some of these planned developments going forward. And that's one of the things we're going to do to address your concerns. Unfortunately, for you on this one, we basically approved the lots and put in all the infrastructure under a planned development to serve it. So it's kind of hard to turn back on this one. I feel in some respects the ship has sailed. The alternative, if we wanted to do it according to the zoning, we'd literally have to tear up the road and redo all the utilities. And if we were to do that, the price of the lots would be cost prohibitive. I don't know if they'd get developed. It's taken this many years just to get to this point. If we had to start over with the infrastructure, I don't know how many years, if ever, it would take to get these lots developed, because the price of the lots would be probably higher than anything else that we're currently trying to market in our community. I don't know if you have anything else.
I do. I'm speaking almost directly to you, Tom, so I apologize ahead of time.
Oh, it's quite all right.
So part of the, yeah.
First of all, I'm gonna say, that's my feelings on this.
Yes.
And I had to get them out because I'm gonna blow up otherwise.
Yep, and I appreciate that. I really do. And yeah, I echo your sentiment with planned developments,
And-
as you guys have heard.
Right. And I understand that, we're pretty much, we have to do something with this.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
So I'm gonna, I should not, this is totally out of order and all of that stuff. I think that I would like you guys to remember this when we are rewriting some of our ordinance. Part of the problem with these lots is they are small. They're 4,000 square feet. And then on top of it, it's got a rear parking design alleyway, which the first thing that I asked this gentleman is I was like, don't you have like 5 different layouts? And they were like, not for that size. It's concerning, right? And I think that when I've had calls when people are like, can't I section off 4,000 square feet and put a house on it or a duplex, you're like, that is really small. And I mean, if it's a plan, like a true plan development where we're getting variation and it's like, the cluster housing and stuff, that's a whole different thing. This is for when we're like looking at our ordinance and what, we should be establishing things that we can get, even if they're cookie cutter 5 different designs in, you know what I mean? Like, so we can get that variation. And so I echo exactly what you're saying. This is frustrating to look at this. That's no disrespect. I just like I don't know that at 4,000 square feet, if we would have had a little bit larger, you guys could have been like, yeah, we have these 5 other designs we can get in, and we wouldn't even be sitting here to an extent, right? Like,
I understand that, and I mean, at some level, we have to play the ball where it lies, right? This is what we have here. As far as cookie cutter and looking the same, I get accused of that all the time, right? I'm a Walmart builder. You can drop me off at any of the things. I work for a company where this year we're going to build, sell, and close 90,000 homes. I got into this business because I never thought I was going to be able to own my own home. The fact that I work for a company that 90,000 families a year live in one of our homes, that's powerful to me. We have a housing shortage. There's a housing shortage all over the country. There's a housing shortage here. It may not be, this cookie cutter may not be the same or desirable for everybody, but for a lot of families, and We just lost our founder, Don Horton, a couple weeks ago, so I get a little emotional still talking about him. But he started with nothing in 1978 and built and sold over 1 million homes in the United States. We sold our 1,000,000th home, I think, 2 years ago. To some people, these are a cookie cutter community, but to a lot of families, this is home. This is where their families grow up. This is where, you know, their first kid was brought home. It's all of those things. Home is a powerful thing, and it's not always for everybody, but for our customers, this is it, right? So that's why I'm here tonight to, you know, we're coming into this market. We wanted this to be our first community in the Madison area. And this is the product that we have that fits on these lots. This is what we can do. We can be the third one in trying to make this work. And this is what, and I proposed some changes to it that we're, you know, trying to work with you guys to get this working. And we really, really would like to be building here in town, so.
No, appreciate that, and sorry for your loss with the founder. I guess my comment in hearing Tom talk about it, you know, this reminds me a lot of military housing. So I don't know if you've ever been,
Yeah, lived in it.
it's like all the captains live here, all the sergeants live here, all the colonels live here. I'm understanding of the space and the dividing issue because you don't get to pick who your neighbor is. You know, it's just you're the captain, you got assigned to this house. I've lived in base housing, so I think of that kind of stuff. Being the newest commissioner on here, I guess I'm not as familiar with why did we go away from the single places? Because I'm understanding, I see them around Madison a lot. They have a little bit more space, while yet they're still pretty much on top of each other. You know, you look at Fitchburg, and it's almost like shoulder width between the buildings, but they have their space, and they have their ability to, this is mine, this is my thing. It's not the shared walls, it's not the, are we gonna have to fence it off and add? Does that make sense? So I guess that's what I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I can, and we're getting kind of far away from this, but totally don't have a problem talking about this. So originally, when this was approved, so to back up, our ordinance is older, and some of it is probably not realistic for what it should be. And so to kind of, instead of updating the ordinance, what they do is approve a zoning district with an overlay of a planned development allowing for what they were calling flexibilities, right? And so that's where we are today, and why I'm trying to move in a direction of rewriting the zoning code so that we have better outline of what, when a developer comes in, I can be like, here's what you need to meet, and then they can, you know, go through that and see what they can meet and how much the cost will be and all of that fun stuff. So this is kind of a ripple effect of an area that was done as a zoning district with an overlay plan development, originally single family homes. The flexibility that was approved through a plan development was reduced side yard setbacks, and then everything was put in the ground, utilities, roadway, all of that stuff, and then they decided not to build. Like, their builder must have backed out. Again, you and I are have almost been here the exact same amount of time.
Yeah.
So
Our first meetings are the same, yes.
Yes, exactly. So one of the things to cut costs for a developer is a duplex or twin home, as they call them. Essentially, you know, you have the zero lot line wall, and it helps with like curbing costs. And so one of the calls they made is said, hey, can we do this? Can we change the zoning district? Okay, if you change the zoning district, then you have to go through and you have to change the plan development because it basically gets replaced. And ideally what will happen is, like, I want to say next year, but I think that's a little ambitious, is that when a project like this comes forward, you'll be like, here's your zoning district, here's what you guys have to meet, here's what the ordinance says. And currently, we don't really have, you know, that. And in fact, that's why the next item on is looking at our multifamily residential district and changing it. So does that help clear that up a little bit?
But so we have approved, or this commission and the city council have approved the lot with the single families where they're a little more spread
will-
out.
yep.
We're coming back and we're discussing, hey, we don't want, because that's what the utilities are, because if we've put in the utilities for that, I'm with the mayor,
Yep.
that we don't want to have to go in and redo all of that stuff.
Yeah,
We're
and,
just-
yep, and so then the developer came in, and they were like, we could do duplexes, and then some of like, what would be like, almost like the extra lot, like, let's say there's five lots. This one now has to be a single family, because, you know, they're essentially the 0 lot line. You guys are kind of picking up, right? Utilities don't have to be moved. I think the corner that, like, and especially after talking with Chris, and he made me understand this, the corner that we're backed into is, the lots are so small and they're rear access that it's like and I then got on after a meeting and I Googled to see what kind of design that we could find for narrow lots, and it is really limited. Yeah, and so like, that's where I was like, I feel a little on this painted into a corner, but I think that we can ask things through the plan development, not through the zoning district, but through the plan development, where we say, these need to be offset by 3 feet so you're not looking into your neighbor. We can ask for a basement so that there's extra storage, so we don't have to worry about and that's approved through the plan development, quite frankly, so.
Okay.
Sorry to.
No, that's okay. And I would have liked to see those little bitty single homes, like a village home thing, rather than the twins. But I understand that the cost difference to.
It's also the market, right? You know, do I think I can find 8 buyers for the single-family ones in there? Yeah. Do I think I can get 76? No.
Okay.
And the 2 buyers that were on this project prior also said, nope.
Well, it's according to the price point. And I'm sure your price point might have.
It's the same thing, right? The market is the market,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know that better than anybody.
I'm just saying, a
Right.
lot of people looking for around 400,000 or less with a single-family home.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I get it. So let's just, if I'm understanding, Chris, what you need from us is a list of what we do, right? So I'm just gonna say basement for me would be an absolute. Setback, my only concern with going more than the 2 feet would be if we'd lose part of the driveway and couldn't park the extra cars. So at 2 feet, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking if I
I think
say
2 feet, I feel like that's doable. 3 is maybe, right? I can't say 100%, but a 2-foot offset, I think will do it.
Okay, so a minimum of a 2 foot. Done.
I would ask that you word it minimum of X, because like, if
Okay,
something comes
minimum
back
of
and it's
2
4 feet, and then
No,
it's like, yeah.
minimum of 4, I mean, see what you're doing to me, Chris? Minimum
Sorry.
of 2 feet. They'll really be hating us. And I don't know how to word the color package, but what did we say? You had it at 5 and you said you could do it at 3?
I've got 3 submitted elevation
Okay,
color
so 3
packages.
different fronts. And I'm gonna ask you, why can't you keep that 50%? I totally see why they put that in there. When you go to 0 lot line, it's to add more trees and shrubbery and stuff in the common areas, I'm assuming, yeah?
Well, and I'm gonna ask you this because I know that it came up last time, but essentially what's different about this is that there's several outlots that are assigned around. I'm surprised that the increase can't be moved to those outlots that are in the front. So essentially, if you look, for example, on block 2, here, let me show you guys really fast. So like when you're looking right here, this area right here is an outlot. So, I guess, I haven't looked at the landscaping plan, the original landscaping plan, but I would think that'd be an easy way to make up difference on that. Do you guys know, I'm just on this page right here, sorry. Yeah, but that one would work too. That one would work too. So the front, right, with the rear, that front area in green is actually an outlot that was done for this area, and I believe that there's a walking path, and I think I asked about this the last time that we were here, because I was like, who's in charge of that? So I'm more questioning how that would, to me, be an easy way to get the increase numbers, especially with large-scale trees. I'm posing that question to you. Do you know?
I'd have to double check, but I do believe that that outlot was dedicated. If it wasn't, then it'd be a very easy way to count it as green space.
Yeah, I thought, though, when we were speaking last time, it had not been designated.
I'll get clarification
Okay.
on whether it would. I think from a zoning perspective, it's only restricted to the lot itself.
Well, maybe we need to change or make an exception on that. I don't care if it's on an exact lot, but I do think that to put in a package to add more trees especially, since those people basically have asphalt out back of their houses, you know, it'll also help with the environment to have some trees out there to cool things down. So I realize they won't be in that area, but just in the surrounding area. So if we can keep that 50%, I don't feel like changing that.
This is what I would propose, is I would say 50% can include any adjacent outlots that are attached to the development, so you can count those. Because I don't think the city takes those over until stuff is built as an outlot, generally speaking. But that's how I would amend that to read. If you say we want it
You do the
50%,
language.
however.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't know, was there anything else?
Yeah, Mayor, can you,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the picture of the twin home elevation 1, are you guys putting in sidewalks? Like leading up to those, I guess what I'd call the front door?
Yes.
Okay.
It varies on the location. Sometimes it comes from the side, sometimes it comes from the front, but yes.
Okay.
If you go to the picture from the actual photograph of yeah, you can see, well, you can almost see. There's
Yeah.
sidewalks coming up
There's
from the
like a
side and
cannon
then
in the
going up
middle.
to the units.
Okay, yep.
Right.
Right there,
So
it looks like there's a
It,
plan.
it depends on the block, it depends on the layout, depends on the traffic flow.
But they all will have that.
They should, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's where I'd be standing I'd want to know what the basements are, Chris, you know, what it's going to look like, to which lots can have basements, which can't, if that's a big thing. Probably make sure that the sidewalks are included on that, you know, not just a maybe. And I'm also on board with keeping the 50% landscaping.
I think that'll help the development as well.
Yeah.
Most don't like trees.
Got a whole tree commission on it.
And I think, Chris, is that all of those?
So
And allow the.
yeah, so number 8, this is how I would suggest it to read. The current minimum landscape surface is 50%, and they're asking for 30. However, 30 may be on the owner occupied land, with the other 20% on any of the outlots may be counted, okay? Getting to the 50% ratio.
And Chris, we'll work with you on which
Yep.
those and those calculations.
Okay.
But I did want to just make the clarification that the 30% requirement, the 30% right now is as they're currently zoned. We wouldn't be changing current.
Single family, I could come in and plant my own trees and bushes. These
Right.
people are not gonna be able to do that.
Right.
That's why I'm asking you to keep the 50.
Sure. And as part, just to confirm zoning process, I think a landscape plan would be required to be reviewed and approved, correct,
It'll
Chris?
have to be at the, you guys will be approving the SIP,
Okay.
but I ask, because like, I need it to enforce. You know what I mean? So I need it spelled out from you guys.
But for me, I want to be upfront and say that's not something I want to move on. You know, I want to put it at the 50, which is what For twin homes, that is what the code is.
I'm understanding it, the landscape plan that'll be submitted will be at that 50.
It would need to be at the 50% rule. I think the compromise that, like, what I'm asking is 30% on
The home.
the homeowner property, with the other 20% may be placed on the outlot adjacent to.
Or your walking paths, or
Yeah.
what,
Right,
just
it's
in the neighborhood.
But
Yep.
the landscape plan is the mechanism by which it's laid out and agreed upon.
Mhm.
So, okay, it's
Yep.
not a specific house by house kind of thing.
No.
Yep,
Well,
yep.
I know, they're
Yep.
good to
Totally
ask.
ask the question.
Good to ask.
Don't want
It's
to, I
tough.
don't want to have the first building permit where it's
Yeah,
like, wait a
well,
second, no.
within the constraints that we have, we have asked you to change around and whatnot. You've asked us to change around too, Connor, so, I mean, I appreciate that you did work with what people brought up.
Right.
And hopefully we can make this look as non-cookie cutter as possible within the price point.
So,
Do you have everything, or are
I'm
there
not
others?
sure, I was asking Chris, because I don't have her list.
so the request is through, I'm gonna say 1 through 4. Number 8, the other ones are voided. 6, 7 are voided. Number 8, because they can meet it. Number 8 is the current landscaping ratio is 50%, 30% maybe on the owner occupied properties, with the other 20% maybe on the outlots established. That's what I'm asking for there. 9, 10, 11, and 12, I think just need to be written on there, but they're already in. And so I would ask that it be approved with that, but it's just like needs signed off on by utilities. Are you guys okay with that? Okay. So the additional recommendations for the plan development that would be added to this are minimum parking spaces. I'd like to keep those in just so I have that checkbox. I appreciate checkboxes for that. With the reduced side yard setback, the side windows on the adjacent unit should not line up. And then I put a note, sorry, with all my, not line up, that should be offset with a minimum of 2 feet, so windows do not line up. So I'll mess with the language so it reads better on that. Tom, the front door access should be placed on separate access points and not located on the same porch. You wanted to circle back to that?
No,
Okay.
the conversation was going that this was a given and it wasn't a given.
Okay.
That was my point.
I want to make sure I'm listing it, so if it comes, you know what I'm getting at, so.
Yeah.
Yep, okay,
And-
so then,
Actually, Chris,
Yes.
and I just, to go along with that portion about the front door access, I would like, if there is there's got to be relatively easy, although I understand that there are some uneasy parts about doing this, but some sort of divider,
Okay.
wall, fence, railing, something to separate.
like a
the-
delineation.
Some sort of delineation, I think would be a smart way to go. If I was buying one, I think I'd want that.
On that, I'm adding cost to a home that you might not have. If that's something the homeowners want to do after the fact, that's something that they can do through the homeowner association process. There are times when you don't have owners that don't like each other. You get the complaints,
Yep.
we have 20-something homeowners associations and, all that stuff. I hear them plenty, but there's far more people that get along with their neighbors and love their community rather than a few that don't. So,
Cost-wise, what would a railing cost you?
I don't know.
I
But
mean,
it'd be
just-
it's long-term maintenance, they gotta
Oh,
put a
that's true.
reserve for it, they've
Yeah.
gotta keep it up, they've gotta do all the stuff every year, where it's one of those things where every single dollar
That's probably why
counts.
they did the concrete thing, the wall.
Right, exactly right, I
Because it
spoke to
doesn't
it as
take
a
as
single
much
concrete
maintenance.
earlier, right? These are decisions, we're not making these arbitrarily, these are things we do consider. It's the reason why I object to them when we have
What would
them.
you like to do, Phil?
I think optimally, I would like to see something left in there that says some sort of, even if it's,
Even if it's a chalk line show? I'm
Well,
not kidding.
Yeah, I know. No, a railing or fencing of some sort.
I'm just gonna say some sort of delineation.
A physical
Yeah.
barrier.
Yeah, okay. So B, and then I've struck some of this. So each side-by-side shall consist of changes in material, corporate architecture, and design along walls. This shall include different facade elevations, which you guys said that shouldn't be a problem. The same color and design may not be closer than 3 dwelling units from each other. So that's how that one will be amended. C, duplexes shall have separate covered entranceways, dwelling units with a minimum dimension of 4 feet by 6 feet. This has to be struck because of their design.
Could you go back to B? What was B again?
Let's see, each unit shall consist of changes in material and appropriate architecture detail that add scale to long walls. This will include different facade elevations, which that's like the front where you have the variation and stuff. The same color and design shall not be closer than 3 dwelling units from each other
Got it,
instead of
thank you.
5. I think that's the original. Duplexes shall provide separate covered entranceways for each dwelling unit with minimum dimensions of 4 feet by 6 feet. They're designed next to each other. So we have to strike this. If you guys, do you know what I'm saying? You're looking at me like I'm crazy right now.
No, I'm just thinking, are you saying because there's not a barrier, you can't measure 6 rather than 12?
No, I'm saying that they're both on the same concrete pad. So, like that's what, in
It
other
has a
words,
shared roof over the two.
it has a shared roof over it.
Okay.
Yeah. So C was removed. I absolutely asked that D stay on there, and it doesn't sound like it's gonna be a problem, unless the duplex is located on a double frontage lot, and then in parentheses corner, no door may be located on a side yard of the proposed building. One access door may be located in the front and the other rear. Again, I explained why.
Except for the model, right?
Well,
That'll
but
be,
it's a
I'll
side
make sure
yard.
that's a corner lot, so we don't even need to provide an exception for it. I appreciate that.
Tim's giving me a hard time. He
Yeah, I
always
still have a
does.
smile on my face.
Number 3 is due to the small footprint of the site, all proposed duplexes shall have basements. So this is, I'd like to keep that. You can ask for that to be amended at the. at
And
the
that's my
council.
intention to do so, right?
Yes.
Which is why I asked us to revisit it some time ago now,
Yeah.
right? Because to do that, because it's my intention to do that, but obviously site conditions providing otherwise, you know, I don't want to put something in that it's just not, it's not prudent to do.
And you said you'll have it in time
Yeah,
anyway.
I will call you guys second as soon as I find
We are
out.
reasonable when it comes to that. We have another subdivision that couldn't do a couple houses
Yeah.
because of the water table.
No,
So-
and I hope you guys feel that my request is reasonable as well, to make sure I, stand behind the product. I don't want to build something that's not going to work. Right.
So number 4 is approval by engineering, or do we do the small footprint? Yeah. 4 is approval by engineering, building inspector, fire inspector, and any other city department. So if like something weird comes along, right? And then number 5 is any other conditions identified by city staff or you folks. So, all right. So that's what we have. So you have, again, the 3 options. You can recommend approval to the Common Council. You can table it and ask for information back, but you have to be very specific, or you can deny it. And then with that, I'm out of this. So that's like I think I gave you guys enough information. And if you have other questions or concerns, obviously, but that's the list that we have now. So
I have one other question or concern.
sure.
And my crystal ball says that this will also be an item at council where I think I'd like to see, and others are gonna wanna see, a few more, if possible, 4 to 6 single-family units interspersed into the overall development. I know there's,
So
cost.
Chris and Connor, so I know that when we met separately, there were like a couple of spaces that utilities would have to be moved in order to get the duplexes in. I would ask that you go back and reevaluate those, and if it makes more sense to have them as single family versus a duplex, maybe that's the way we approach this. Are you guys okay with that? Does that make sense?
Sounds like it makes sense.
If the answer is, this is the optimum though with the utility relocations, is everyone okay with that too? If it's six is what we've got based on the utility locations, then, or 8, I'm sorry, math is hard.
I guess that's the thing is like, if you're having to relocate utilities, which is what we're trying to avoid,
Right,
then those should become single family.
We're
homes
playing
for
it where
sure.
it lies, right? That's exactly what it said. So if, I don't want to be
Pardon me,
perceived,
guys.
and I'm speaking for Connor here, but I understand what the request is. But if we come back and say, we made a good faith effort, but we're still, this is the number is the number, is that going to be enough?
We don't want to abandon laterals
This
or
is-
have to cap laterals and not use them if they're already installed and so on.
I'm
and so
punching
forth.
more holes in water mains, I'm punching more holes in sewer mains, right? The more you turn a pipe into Swiss cheese, the more
Phil,
chance you have for.
How many more would you want to see in there? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball.
I'd like to see a minimum of another 4, because there's two more blocks that do not have, that are just the multifamily units that, that are the duplexes, so a
So-
minimum of 4.
Do they have to be in them 2 blocks? Or
I
if-
would think that would be,
And if it's not possible to do with those in those 2 blocks, are you gonna be okay with the number we have? So let's say they go back to those 2 blocks and it's just the utilities are there, they don't line up, they can't do them there. Are you okay, or do you wanna try to put them somewhere else?
I normally would agree with you, Tom, but if we get a weird number and I round down or up, I do not want to be in trouble with you guys, so pick a number, like. I know, we need a 0.25 house, like.
Okay, so is it 12? That would be 12. You showed us 8 tonight. Me saying 4 more, that would be 12 units, 12 single-family homes.
But if we can't find the 4 more, what then? Do we say for a third time that this project doesn't work?
There are future
You
phases.
can make the
yeah.
recommendation and we can get that information for the council.
yeah, I'm gonna go with, if we can get it to 12, add an additional 4.
And if you can't get there, then when you report out to council, then you'll just, Phil will be there.
Okay,
Yep.
we can address it.
I think if you, how can I say this? If you show that that's the lot that you'd have to move and cap and everything, rather than, that there's an actual reason. It's not that you don't want to build 4 more houses.
Yeah, and
Okay.
forgive my questions, and if I'm being direct, right? Because I'm new to this, first time here, and ideally last time for this project, but not the last time for new projects, right? The new zoning stuff and all that other stuff, I'm certainly eager to. We like when we have situations where it's like, this is what can happen, this isn't, we're planning on a long-term relationship with Forward and JSD, so we're here long-term. I'm just trying to figure out what this time is, right? So I can get started and then we start working together on the next one.
So this is what I'm recommending, is that for the sake of just, no utilities may be moved, because that's the whole reason we're approving this. Utilities that may need to be moved need to convert back to single-family homes. Request is for an additional 4 more single-family homes, and we'll write it like that. And then I think that by the time that you guys come to council, you need to give us a solid answer on that. And then if you can't, I will have to push for the 4 more single-family homes, or you'll have to make a case for less than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would imagine that you'll have to look at the utilities, look at the plat, and see what you can do and
Yep.
present that.
Absolutely, we'll have our engineers
'Cause
confirm it well before.
it may be that you can only do them in 4 areas that doesn't please somebody.
Sure.
you know, that could happen too. It could all be in one section and it might be overload for that section.
Okay, so that's how I'm asking that that be written. Is there anything else that you guys are asking for?
So you did add they can't adjust the utilities.
Yeah, no utilities may be removed. We're requesting that any areas that have utilities that need to be removed must go to single-family homes. In addition, we would like to see four more single-family homes, okay? So that's how that's what I wrote in my notes.
And the reason we don't want to move utilities, you may already know this, is number one, there's a cost, but even more than that is we don't want to be patching a new road because the moisture gets in and the road deteriorates faster.
Chris, can you just add for a total of 12?
Okay.
Just so we know where we started, so that's in there if anybody's reading it.
And again, guys, at the council meeting, you need to talk about what you can get in there, and if you can't, what number you want reduced and why and where. Yeah. So, okay, thank you.
So then my question for you, Chris, is so we have a resolution with all these things in it.
Yes.
We have to turn that into an ordinance, right? For the 2 readings?
Yeah, and so what I'm
So
gonna do.
that's what you're gonna do at council, right? You're gonna convert this?
Yeah, and this is not on for tomorrow.
Nope, it's not.
It's not. So I might even go back and just write these notes up now so that we can make sure, like after this meeting, obviously, so that we can make sure we get the language correct, and that'll be the resolution and ordinance
In the ordinance,
to go.
yeah, and you'll run it past the attorney, probably.
Oh,
just-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you guys? Because we are actually changing the zoning, which is an ordinance.
It would be
right?
an ordinance. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, the light just went on in my head, believe it or not.
Thank you.
It only took me an hour and a half.
I mean, you did great. Okay.
So we have to make a motion to recommend approval of the resolution with all the conditions that you all just identified. Okay. Is there a second? Second by Farrell. Any more discussion or clarification?
Tim, can we do a roll call on this one?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mayor, this is Tim. Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go
Just
ahead.
one point of clarification. Let me get my lower hand button up. In the resolution conditions, and this is specific to basements, there's a reference to duplexes. Do you want to modify that to include all residential units? So it's not just the duplexes. And then perhaps add some modifying language where possible, and then say something like, the developer applicant shall provide evidence as to why basements cannot be located in a specific unit, something like that. Because I think right now it's worded as duplexes only.
I'm going to change it to
Yeah,
buildings.
Tim's, good point.
Okay,
Yeah, plus they're
Buildings?
calling them twin
Yeah.
homes as well.
yeah.
Yep, and I think if we can, I'd like to leave it the way that it is and for you guys to ask for the amendment so I can make sure I'm saying lots, this, and this cannot have basements due to X, Y, and Z, so that way it's all on record. Are you okay with that, Tim? Other Tim?
Oh, sure, yeah, because
Okay.
I'm obviously, like was pointed out, this is gonna, an SIP will have to come back, and perhaps at that time, more information will be known about where basements would or wouldn't work.
Okay.
Just need to make sure the single-family homes are also covered if it's,
We just said building, so I changed it from duplex to building, so I want just to show that that was the change.
All right.
Okay. go
Any
ahead.
other clarifications? Hearing none, so we'll go by roll call. Caravello,
Aye.
Farrell,
Aye.
Tillison,
Aye.
Majewski,
Aye.
Bradford,
aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Swadley, aye. That motion carries. Thank you so much for being here.
So we'll have you in 2 weeks at the council meeting. So I'll try to get that written up and sent out tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Before I continue, Mr. Sweeney, I tried to send you an email. Your item is actually on for city council tomorrow night. And I was trying to reach out to you earlier, but I didn't get through to you, so hopefully you can hear me. Appreciate you being here tonight as well. Okay, next item is review of the proposed changes to the multifamily residence ordinance.
So, last Plan Commission meeting, I gave you guys markups for the multifamily residential. I had some feedback. Those changes were made. I did not notice this as like a public hearing necessarily. Like we're not looking for recommendations. Well, I'm looking for recommendations for changes to this, but not necessarily to go to council and all of that. I would like to take it, hopefully in the next Plan Commission meeting or two. I can go through, I know everybody's tired, but I would really like to get this done. And also, if you guys have additional things that you want or need, let me know. So first of all, we have just a brief overview. Right now we have MR 10 and MR 24, which is the amount of units per acre essentially, and they're two separate zoning districts. That is going to go away. And we're going to look at stuff like, you know, we're going to look at other things like parking, you know, setbacks, other elements for determining what the units per acre, and that unit per acre is going to go away essentially. And what was happening prior is that you guys, well, the city was approving plan developments to increase the units per acre. So if we have a development where it makes sense to get 28 units per acre versus 24, it shouldn't be a planned development, right? Because likewise, we could have an area that's doesn't meet those minimum requirements too, and so that's why we're looking at changing this. So anywhere that you see the MR10 or MR24 in our ordinance, that'll go away and get replaced with just MR. So essentially, just for a fast, fun lesson that everybody here probably already knows, is that you have what's a permitted use in the district, which it doesn't have to go through an approval, it just goes through staff approval. And then you have a conditional use, which is where we would come in here and then you guys could assign like listed, and that's where we go listed reasonable like conditions for that conditional use permit. So unless it's listed in here or state statute or whatever, we can't be like, I always like to say, like, we can't require them to have unicorns because it's not like listed in the ordinance, right? So.
On those examples of conditional use that I'm aware of, and you can probably rattle off more, is on a commercial restaurant, a drive-through is usually a big one.
Yeah. Because
we've seen what happens at drive-throughs, especially during the pandemic.
Yes.
You may have some other examples.
No,
of
that's a
conditional
perfect
use.
one, actually. Normally in normal areas, a conditional use, a drive-through for a restaurant is a conditional use permit, and that's really normal. Like that's like 101, perfect example. So what I did is that the permitted uses in this, and there's two sheets, just more of an FYI. So like, I really like spreadsheets, and so what I did is one of them was the MR10, MR24, and then how I merge those together with like those regulations. You can see how they break down per unit per acre and all that fun stuff. So what I did on the permitted uses is I pulled these from existing MR10 and MR24. So if you see something and you're like, I don't want that there, we can always strike it, but I just pulled them over from existing. So the following residential uses: single family homes up to 6 per acre, twin houses, duplexes up to 8 per acre, townhouses up to 8 per acre, and multifamily and apartments up to 10 units per acre. Nobody's going to come in here and do a 10 unit per acre because it's not going to be cost effective. If they want to do it, I don't know that it doesn't deserve just city staff approval at that point. Outdoor public recreation, this all falls under definitions, and I have them, and I cannot remember them now, so I apologize. Public service utilities, community living arrangement, 1 to 15 residents. It's really weird on this one. The definition breaks down like 1 through 8 and then 8 through 15. I just combined it, and it has the definition of what that is there. So and it was already a permitted use in the district. Mobile support structures, cell towers is a permitted use. That is like, if you guys have questions over that, I would ask that you reach out to Rick, because it's like real complicated on that stuff. Solar energy systems, what was interesting about our ordinance, the way it was currently written, is it was like, we broke it down really different, but it had a whole other area that was like energy, and it was like solar, permitted, wind, conditional. No, we just moved those into those areas instead of having a separate line for it. The G is a non-family household in the MR district, maybe limited to 3 unrelated people. I explained why I have that. It's just my years of like working in a college town. It's a nice way to enforce if there's like way over occupancy. And by unrelated, it's not step kids, foster children, grandparents, like anything like that. No, it's like if me and 5 of my buddies are living in a 2-bedroom house, and that's what that is. Home occupation, professional home office for non-retail goods and services for businesses that do not require customer access or alteration of structure. Okay, that's a permitted use. We don't want to mess with that. Conditional uses, principal land use permitted as conditional use. A is residence, so townhomes over 8 units per acre. So anything over the 8 units would have to come to you guys for a conditional use permit. Multi and apartments over 10 units per acre, anything over 10 units per acre, which I can guarantee will be every single one of them, because again, it would not be cost effective not to do it that way. I did have a question. So I had a couple people reach out and they were like, why is community gardens on there as a conditional use? Well, what I did is I pulled that area that was the community gardens, and then I put those conditions on there. So that would be what we would be using anyway to judge the stuff that we'd be asking for. And I think keeping it like that is a great way to do it, because you can see exactly why it's like what we're asking for. And I'm not going to read through those, because it was essentially what was in the definition of community gardens. Sorry, I flipped the page wrong. Okay. And then we have C, market gardens. Again, there was a question that came up. Actually, multiple people asked the question. Those are the regulations for that and what they have to meet and why they need to come here. And I do think it's a good idea for those to come for a conditional use permit, because we're like, hey, who's in charge of this? Like, we're not talking about a garden that you're putting out on your back porch on the multiplex. This is like a large scale garden. So we've got community living arrangements over 16 residents, bed and breakfast establishments. I don't see that really happening in a multifamily residential area, but that was listed, and we can keep it or leave it. Group daycare centers, I think that that's a great one to leave in there, quite frankly, because if we have a multifamily residential area and then there's a chance of having one of the areas converted into childcare areas that would be functioning from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Within walking distance of a multifamily residential, I think it's a really good, use. Exterior communication devices. So when I read up on this is like if we were attaching satellites to the place, which probably isn't a bad thing to have. I mean, I think it's like large scale. So like, I don't know why you would do that nowadays, but you maybe, yeah, we can leave it in there. It's probably not a bad thing to have. And then small wind energy systems is a conditional use permit. I can see why that probably would. They're going to spell out in our ordinance, because I think that's a relatively new one, minimum requirements for that. Okay. So permitted accessory use, detached residential garages, gazebos, or similar accessory structures, so that's permitted. Family daycare home, 4 to 8 children. We actually have that pretty regulated in our ordinance, and it all references back to state statutes, so just more of an FYI. On-site parking lots, all areas intended to be utilized as a driveway shall be surfaced with asphalt or concrete. The parking area shall be striped. Private residential recreational facilities, drainage structures. It's odd that that is written out there as an accessory use. We can strike that. I would say that this falls under I don't know why you wouldn't be able to have a drainage area in any district, but, and then lawn care. Temporary uses, contractor, project offices, contractor on-site, equipment storage on-site, real estate offices, temporary portable storage containers, outdoor assembly, and special events. A through D, it was brought up that there, and I agree, I just didn't know what direction you guys wanted to go about a time period on that. Is there like 6 months after construction is finished? Do you want me to look into that? Like, is there anything reasonable that you guys want to see there?
What's the definition of temporary?
That's, I mean, dang, man. It's a great question. If we don't have it in our ordinance, I'm sure I've looked it up too.
It depends. I mean, we had that conversation for number E when we had the food cart, and temporary to them meant permanently. Or it meant 364 days, and then you could apply for a new one on the 365th day. So I think that's something that we can define.
Yeah, so if you guys think of what you want to see there, and I can spell it out however you want, and I think it is a good idea to have, something in there, so then I have something to fall back on to enforce, right? So, and then E, if you look, so I was talking to Brett earlier about this. We did have outdoor food carts, outdoor assembly, and special events in there as temporary. I removed food carts, and I kind of debated on removing outdoor assembly, and here's why. One of the things that we're moving towards in our inner office is right now there are 5 different permits all in conjunction with this in different departments. So we're working on utilizing, having all of the stuff listed in the same permit. It would all go through the same avenue. That's how we would permit it. So I'm sure there's,
It's really complicated. So let's say somebody wants to have a graduation party at a park. They call Park and Rec. Park and Rec reserves the park. They fill out an application. Oh, now they want liquor. Well, now they have to talk to the clerk and the police chief. So now they have to fill out an additional 1 or 2 forms, and it just snowballs.
It's crazy. So we're working on essentially funneling that, right? And so that's where I even debated on just taking out outdoor assembly, because it's all going to be under a special events permit. So just more of an FYI on that. Okay. So minimum setback regulations for multifamily residential district, and this is where a lot of this stuff comes in with I pulled all of this stuff using those existing 2, and if they didn't, I got on and looked and just kind of saw directions on where other municipalities were going. So minimum lot size is essentially 1 acre, and it has the square footage. Minimum lot width of frontage is 100 feet. Right now, it is written real goofy. It's something about there is street frontage and minimum frontage, width frontage. It's 2 different numbers. We need to get rid of that. It needs to be 100 feet of street frontage. It is easier to read and easier for me to interpret, okay? Minimum front yard, street yard setback is 25 feet from the right-of-way. So state law normally from center line is 33 feet, and then that's where the property line generally starts. Okay. So minimum side yard setback is 10 feet, minimum rear yard setback is 20. Accessory structures in the front yard and street yard shall be 25 feet from the right-of-way line. Again, that's mirroring, so you're not going to get a weird accessory structure in essentially the front. And I'm you're not going to get a weird garage in the front yard. That's going to be popped out. You laugh, but I've had these things come up. No. So side yard and rear yard is 5 feet from the property line and alleyways. And again, this is echoed from existing. If you guys want to see more, I'm fine with that. Minimum building separation, 20 feet from municipal structures on the same lot. More than 20 feet between buildings may be required if the land between buildings is needed for fire lanes. Does that make sense to everybody? Yep, okay. And you can have more than one principal structure in a lot, which is what we should be doing in these districts anyway. So that way we're not getting, that was another one that they were doing through plan development. Maximum building height for a principal structure is 45 feet or 3 stories. Building height is vertical distance. This is what I put on there, so I knew how it was measured. And this is how it's measured essentially from the eave, and I put a picture because I really like pictures, so I can see how it's measured. I can tell you right now, and I'm just preparing you, this is the one that we will get pushback on. So I've heard developers echoing that they want to see more of a height. This is your decision, right, as the plan commission. With that said, I did corner our fire chief, and I would be comfortable going up to 4 stories in residential. The height of the ladder is 100 feet, but like think about a triangle, right? So like the fire truck can't be parked on the building and adjacent, you know, so it's got to go like this. So even if this is 100 feet, that doesn't mean that it can reach 100 feet straight up, but it needs to get to the building, and then it also needs to be at a safe distance. So you guys are kind of picking up what I'm throwing down on that. And that was after yelling at him while he was walking through the hallway. So I was like, I was a little taken back by that. Okay. Yeah, so right now we have a maximum height of 45 feet or 3 stories. So if you guys want to increase that, you can to a 4-story. We could change the maximum height a little bit, but like I always fall back personally. Safety is my number one concern, and we want to make sure we can meet, like we can get somebody out, especially since it's residential. It's not a business office where, you know, so maximum height of accessory structures is 20 feet. No pavement for parking area shall be closer than 5 feet into the adjacent lot line unless there is a shared driveway documented with a recorded easement. Minimum.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Excuse me. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to piggyback a little bit on the height, and that's based on my experience in other communities. There are 2 areas in other communities that I've worked in where developers ask for variances and then default to the plan development, and that is parking and building height. So if one of the goals of this process is to minimize the use of the plan development process, I think this allowing that extra height would go a ways in achieving that outcome. Now, obviously, as Chris mentioned, there's going to be some safety concerns, but if fire and police are okay with that, a sprinkler system would be required anyway with that type of development. But anyway, just wanted to share that based on my experience. Parking and height are the most so.
Parking I can tell you nightmares about. We'll get there. Okay, so that is one that but I'm telling you, it's going to come up. Tim brought it up. It's going to come up. I want you guys to figure out what you feel comfortable with, and then that way we can go from there. And also, if you came in, you're like, I want 32 stories, I'd be like, no way, we can't get ladders there. So, stuff to think about. Let's see. Minimum landscaping surface ratio. I referenced the section. It says maximum accessory building coverage is 10%. Minimum landscape surface ratio is 50%. That's straight out of what we currently have. Required buffer yard, combine a distance of vegetation, fencing, and berm, which result in reduction of visual and other interaction with adjoining properties. And it says see district, see the section. I always think of when I'm driving into town, there's the development, and they clearly put berming so that people didn't have to look out at a busy street. Like it's berming, that stuff is important. So minimum number of off-street parking spaces required on a lot included in garage and all designated parking surfaces is 2.5 per 3 or more bedrooms, 2 per 2 bedrooms, 1 per 1 bedroom, or efficiency. Parking lot layout and dimensions will follow the off-street parking and traffic circulation standards, and then it references all parking surfaces shall be paved with a hard all-weather surface that is clearly marked spaces. N, so again, M, and then the height of the building. have mixed feelings about parking here. I think even if you are fortunate enough that you can work from home, a lot of times you have to have a car, you know? So I think we want to have at least meet the needs of the people living in those apartments to make sure that they have enough parking. So food for thought. And off-street parking, bike parking spaces shall be provided equal to 10% of the overall automobile parking space requirement. The 10% requirement may be broken up between short-term and long-term parking spaces. And I did short-term and did the definition, like 50 feet from the building, and it can't be, it's silly that we have to write this stuff, but we do. So 50 feet from the principal building entrance and at the same grade as the sidewalk or accessible route, so it's not at the end of a ravine and people are falling trying to get to the bike racks. Long-term parking, long-term bike parking for residential uses may be provided in garage, storage rooms, and other residential accessory secure area spaces within dwelling units or on balconies are not counted towards satisfying parking requirements. I had this come, somebody had asked me, they were like, well, if we designate stuff inside, can it count? Yeah, it should. And so that's why I put it there. So if somebody, you know.
I recently toured a facility that had underground parking, and they had bike racks mounted to the walls. And they were allowed in that community, but I was told in other communities that didn't count, and they thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah, I would personally rather store my bike not in the elements. So I think just specifying. So lot coverage, reviewed by engineering staff and approved by the planning department and our plan commission shall be required. So the principle and standards set forth in the city erosion control stormwater management policy, which shall include the stormwater management ordinance and city construction site control ordinance, shall be used by the property owner and staff for drafting and reviewing stormwater management plans. A minimum of 30% of the developer gross site area, GSA, shall be held as a permanent protected green space. So what would happen is, like, let's say you have like 2 acres. So you have to meet the minimum setback requirements. You have to meet the minimum parking requirements. You have to meet the minimum green space requirements. And then, of course, you have to meet the minimum height requirements and stuff like that. And that would dictate how many units per acre, essentially, you can get in. We're not going to be looking at, like, the golden 24. It'll be like, what can work on this site? So, so this is something that I used when I was in Whitewater, and I appreciated it. So minimum usable floor space in the MR district. No dwelling unit shall be constructed or remodeled to have less living area than the following standards, and it lists out standards for each area. And then, because I just really like definitions for the purpose.
What would a tiny house be considered?
Oh, Tim.
I had to bring it up. Somebody
I
had
knew
to.
you did. Okay, I will circle back around to this, but I'm not going to talk about it right this very second. Let me
Okay.
get through B, C, and D, and then I can circle back around to tiny houses, okay? For the purpose of this section, floor area shall be the sum of the areas of the floor of the building used for human occupancy or use. A measurement from the interior of the walls, but not to include unfinished basement, garages, porches, breezeway, or common hallways, and unfinished attics, okay? Multifamily, each unit shall be designed to meet the minimum space use and location requirements of the ordinance, and then it references. With the exception of habitable rooms, shall have at least one window directly facing the outdoors. So it can't face an indoor area and be considered a bedroom, okay? Multifamily buildings are permitted to have an office, gym, maintenance area, and other facilities associated with the building, multifamily building. This may also include group daycare centers. That was the one thing that I did change and add in, because right now I feel like there's a shortage. Okay, so let me circle back to what Tim was asking. So, all right. And I cannot quote this stuff off the top of my head. If you really want to know more about it, I totally will, like, meet with you and we can discuss it. But single family, 800 square feet with no less than 500 square feet of first floor space. So this is what people do not understand about the definition of, like, when we are watching stuff and you're like a tiny home, right? Tiny homes are technically built on trailers, and they fall under a trailer in a trailer park regulation. Now, so when people think tiny homes, it's not really the square footage you're looking at or the layout, it's how they're constructed. So in other words, if you wanted to have a single family home of 800 square feet, which is small, and it's on a concrete slab and or basement, that would be a permitted thing, right? But if you're having what everybody thinks of when they're watching like tiny home builders and all of that, those are technically constructed on trailers. And so they meet different definitions, and this is state code, right? Okay. So those would be permitted only in areas that are like trailer parks and or temporary trailer, temporary. So does that make sense? And Tim likes poking me because he came in and poked me and why won't you let us do this?
It's my way of getting even.
I know.
And then the follow-up to that, of course, is
Oh, man.
accessory dwelling units.
You can't live in an accessory dwelling unit. I will circle back to this. Right now, we were talking about multifamily residential, okay? I want to make that abundantly clear. That would be something that would most likely be in single-family areas, and we can talk about it when we start rewriting that area, and I have no problem doing that, but we definitely don't want that in a multifamily residential area. Like that, this should be like an overall area. So, okay. So, multifamily residential building facade shall incorporate at least 3 of the following. So we're like, this is where we're looking for like, so it doesn't look so cookie cutter. Changes in wall plane, roof line changes. I'm paraphrasing, sorry, I don't like, I'm getting, awnings and other weatherproof for pedestrians. Distinct changes in texture and color of the wall surfaces. A covered porch area or other designated gathering areas occupying for at least 25% of the facade. So like if it's going out, that's, gable, areas. Vertical accent and focal points, and then artwork or the reliefs. So they have to meet 3 of those. Would you guys like to see anything else there? This is where we can go like, hey, this can't be cookie cutter. These are the things, like they have to meet one of these 3 things. Or 3 of these 5 things. You know what I'm saying? Okay.
I guess I want to go back to this tiny home, and I know that's
man.
Darn it, I tell you.
Jared! This isn't what we're talking about tonight. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I disagree with the definition. Like, that's a trailer home's, it's on a trailer,
It is.
right?
Tiny homes are constructed on trailers.
Not all.
Not all.
But if it is, so as long as it's 800 square feet and it is on a slab or on a basement, it would not be what everybody goes, it's a tiny home. Does that make sense? Like what you and I, like.
And I guess that's where I'm open to the interpretation of it, because there are many prefab homes that gets delivered on a trailer and craned off.
Prefab home is very different. A prefabricated home
Yeah.
is very different than a trailer or a tiny home. So a prefab home, honestly, the ones that we're talking about tonight, those are prefab homes.
Yes,
Yes.
I agree with that.
Yes. So that's very different. And it has to do with the way, like I'm trying not, first of all, we're not going to deal with that in this district. So that's why I want to make abundantly clear. This is for like multifamily residential. And again, we can tackle some of the stuff.
Can't we stack containers,
But what it comes down to is the construction, right? So like when somebody, maybe it's because I'm like in this field. So if somebody's like, I live in a tiny home, and it turns out their tiny home is 800 square feet on a slab. That is not probably what the industry defines as a tiny home, which are normally purchased, and they're nice, right? They're cool, but it's normally like people purchase a trailer bed and then they'll build them, and that's what you like see with the, so yeah. I'm not disagreeing necessarily, like I don't have a problem with houses that are small, but it's like what people define as the tiny
We
home.
have 600 square foot homes, single family homes in
Yeah, and I think right now that we, like in this part of the definitions, which, again, we won't see, and we shouldn't.
No,
see,
I think
you know,
the 800 is
yeah.
good. I guess
Yeah.
it's late and I'm not gonna sit here and
Yeah.
talk about tiny homes, even though I probably could spend hours on it.
I mean,
so.
if you, Jordan, if you wanna just like one afternoon, make an appointment with me and we can go get coffee and discuss tiny homes.
There are so many things I wanna sit and pick your brain on, but I
that'd be
think the
great.
mayor would be upset.
I don't
so.
think, mayor might join us
Oh,
and then sit and
okay.
argue with me.
I
the
might
whole
learn
time.
something.
Yeah,
So can I-
you guys are all welcome, just as long as we don't make quorum, so,
Okay, can I circle
Yeah.
back here to the facades?
yeah, yes,
Yeah, get on subject, kind of, Sophie?
yeah.
Okay, so distinct changes in texture and color of wall surfaces. So the houses, the apartment buildings that were built on Highway 51, just on the edge of town,
Mhm.
the big white and black ones,
Yeah.
would that be considered?
So, that's a great question. This is the ones over on Nygaard, right? Is that the ones
Yeah.
you're talking about? I am slightly, I can see them and now I can't see them. I would have probably, they might need some more, according to this. Some more breakup of that
I would
facade.
like it just to see the word, different materials. Such as, one being brick or stone, another being
Yeah.
wood, another being stucco, another,
So how about under D, we can say distinct changes in texture, comma, material, and color of wall surface.
that'd be
Okay.
better.
Tom, would you want like a percentage attached to that?
I don't know, I don't want to stymie someone's
Yeah,
design criteria,
Right.
creativity. But,
This is what you're speaking of?
yeah. I mean, I'm not seeing textural differences
mm-hmm,
with any of that. Let me see, color differences, but nothing,
yeah,
It's a little bit of brick on the side,
and, any side that's facing a street has to have that, would have to have those requirements to them. You can't just do like you see these houses that are built and they've got a brick wall halfway up or a quarter of the way up their wall and it's just on the front.
okay,
It's something that needs to wrap if it's going to be on a publicly exposed
okay.
side.
Yeah, and kind of one of my pet peeves, as long as you're talking about things, is where they locate the boxes, like the meters.
Oh, okay.
So they're not, facing a street or,
On the back of
yeah.
the private side of the lot.
And I know on some of the commercial things, I know we're talking multi-unit now, but on the commercial, we've tried to do things so at least the front and the back from the road look nice both ways.
Yeah,
But on some of them, I've noticed that the metering especially is in a spot that, like, why'd they put it there? And I don't know if that's something we can put in there or not. It's an aesthetic thing.
yeah, I'm trying to think of how we would,
You can work on that one and see if you can come up with something.
yeah.
Because
I
I
would probably
realize they have
say-
to be on the exterior of the building, but they can be a little bit more inconspicuous in some cases.
That's what I'm thinking, like meters and then we need to probably, meters and other visible utilities should be hidden from view.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, we're only gonna be able to ask for, they have to pick 3 of these overall. So like, that way it's giving them a little flexibility. So if they don't choose to necessarily hide them, I don't know, you know what I mean? But we can work on that.
Okay.
They may not always be able to move them to a particular area, but they can always screen them.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if we want to move that into like a requirement versus like pick one of these. That's what I was, okay. So I'm gonna move that up, okay. So that'll actually probably be E under number 8. Okay. Is there anything else you guys would like to see? If you think of something too, feel free to reach out. Yes, Al?
I don't know, it might not be the exact place for this, but, you know, one of the most controversial things we had was the quick trip that wanted to go next to the daycare. Does that somehow factor into this at all about, you know, proximity to gas stations and such?
No.
No, I think the one thing in our tower ordinance, we did put limitations from residential, but I don't know if we could for a multi-unit because of some of the law changes at the federal level.
Yeah, and normally what we'd want to do is like, if we had a, like just in general, and this is in the buffer screening stuff, is like, if it's like residential is adjacent to commercial, yada, yada, you have to put like so much buffering up and that kind of stuff. So it's not, you're not looking out in the back of a quick trip necessarily.
And we do have that on with
Yeah.
some of the daycares, for example, they have screening or fencing or something that delineates it from
Right.
a residential.
And then one other thing that's not on here, that I talked about in the parking areas and we may cover it by ordinance, is lighting.
It is, lighting is covered by
I understand.
ordinance.
I just don't want to, I'd like us to take a look at our lighting ordinance to make sure that it's effective.
You're talking about the lumens, or are you talking about the?
Yeah, just, you know,
Yeah,
I don't want a chosen,
because we did have one that recently we had to enforce because they basically changed the lighting and the new lighting didn't conform to the ordinance, so they went back and fixed it. But it was only because we had a complaint from a neighbor.
We actually even too, like in some of the municipalities I've worked in the past, we don't have the equipment, we have it like laid out in our ordinance, but not the equipment to measure it. And we actually have the equipment here and we have gone out and measured it. So it's kind of cool.
I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that we don't, you know.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Especially in multifamily where you have parking surface lots.
Yeah. I know, so this is one of the things I'm kind of trying to get rid of when we rewrite, is our ordinance right now references and then references back. It is, and then sometimes it's just like you're chasing your tail with references. I removed a lot of the references in this, but I know that there is lighting requirements for parking, which is referenced in the parking requirements
Well,
area.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
It'll come up in your review.
Yes.
You'll catch it, but I just want to,
Would you like me to put that on the list of stuff to look at? I have no
Yeah.
problem doing it. Okay. That'll be on the list then.
that can be down a little farther if you want.
Okay, thanks. Okay, is there anything else you guys would like me to look into?
Chris, as long as you were talking about the meters and blocking off the utilities and that, do we have one, does this have to address like the trash enclosure structures or?
Yeah, you know what, I think we should just mention it, trash enclosures, okay? Thank you, that's a really good catch. I'm sure, I'm 99.9% sure we do have trash enclosures in the buffer area, but I think that just stating it
And
is not.
signage we have too.
Yeah. But
Probably
that's always, like, that
references.
is one that I always have had to write up, to be honest with you. So just adding it, I think, is a good idea. Okay. I'm trying to think of a good spot. Okay. All right. Anything else?
So what's the plan?
So I'm gonna make the changes again. If you guys think of stuff that you want to add, let me know. I'm gonna try to go the route of getting this notice and then having you guys review and make a motion for it to go to plan commission or to council at the next meeting. And then from council, then it would go through the 2 readings there and be adopted into ordinance. So that would be the direction we start going.
Thank you.
And- Yeah, and just for the record, you know, as I've stated like a million times, I really hate planned developments, and I have expressed that people that bring planned developments, they better bring something pretty special if they're not gonna go off of our ordinance, and that is a direct quote, so, okay. And again, guys, if you think of anything, feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to get it added.
All right, are there any future agenda items other than this? Okay, I would entertain the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you guys for your
None
patience
opposed.
tonight.
Yep, thank you. Have a good night.
No, you guys are great.